Soberanes with Up Plex Multifamily Investments. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Sierra. Thanks for having me, and looking forward to chat and celebrate wins.
Perfect. Speaking of wins, I know we're just heading into the new year here, and I know probably a lot has been accomplished, in 2022. So why don't you start off telling us your story, your background? How did you get into commercial real estate?
Yes, so I actually started investing in a small multifamily. My first acquisition was a duplex, which I house hacked. Now the term is very well known. But back then I was just trying to find a place, and it kind of make logical sense for me to rent the other side. And I have a business degree background, so I always look for, well, if I can make some money and on the side, that was the principle, not having to pay the full house payment. I'm originally from Mexico, so in Mexico a duplex is not a thing. So it was definitely a new concept, but and that worked out really well, and it got me thinking, if I can buy a house or another duplex a year, then eventually I will be able to retire. So when I went to grad school, I moved out of that duplex and rented both sides, and that was even better. I was like, oh, this is awesome. And then when I graduated, I came back to live in one side, and eventually I bought another house, which was my goal, right, to buy one house a year. And then I deployed. When I deployed, I used most of my time to learn and understand the real estate investing as a way to build wealth. And through that, I learned the concept of syndications, but I didn't know anyone that was doing that. So when I came back from the deployment, I have saved enough money to go under contract for a fourplex. So I was like, okay, this is awesome. If I have four rentals now, it's better than a house or a duplex, right? And that was my thinking big kind of idea. So I purchased two fourplexes back to back in that same year, and then I met my husband, which was open to the idea of investing, and we ended up from there scaling rather quickly. We built our portfolio to 35 doors. This was in Austin, Texas, and it was it was nice cash flowing portfolio. We were clearing 380 or 360 a year. So, in most people's eyes, we were kind of crushing it there, But then I remember we were looking to we were self-managing. So we were pretty and busy, and we were still working. I was working at the hospital as an anesthesia provider. That's my primary career. And my husband was active duty and stationed in San Diego. So that just was not feasible for us to be putting all of the work. And eventually we pursued the syndication model. And in 2020, we started selling most of our portfolio, and we sold the rest of it in the year 2021. And that is also when we transitioned to commercial real estate using the syndication model. We invested in mentorship, and since then we started invested passively in 8 syndications. That put us about 1,200 units, and then we started syndicating ourselves. And I'm sure your audience know the syndication, but in case they don't, it's just buying as a group. So we started buying with groups and doing the work ourselves, so that we were the sponsors. And we have closed since in 8 syndications. That puts us at about 1,700 apartments. So yes, we transition completely and fully. We are also doing other assets. We're doing self-storages and mobile home parks, just because they have a little more cash flow than the traditional syndication. But that is the transition and the story. A little bit lengthy.
Great. No, that's great. So basically in around 2020, 2021 is when you made the transition to commercial, started off passively investing. The 1,700 units that you mentioned, is that as a general partner, a GP, or is that including the passive as well?
No, that's general partners.
Perfect. That's very fast to scale that quickly. So you had 1,200 units passively, right? And then 1,700 as a
general
GP.
partner. Yes. Yeah, this we were doing
That's
the
amazing.
review of the
That's
year
a lot.
yesterday, and we closed 10
Yeah.
transactions, the syndications
Wow.
and the self storages, and those are joint ventures. So we usually have 2 or 3 partners on those. But yeah, we've been rather busy over the past year.
Yes, very busy. So, I mean, both of you and your husband have studied business, so that, and you're both, veterans as well. So thank you very much for your
Thank you very
service.
much for the support. Yeah, and he actually that's what he does full time. He transitioned to from retiring after in 2020. And I
Yeah.
normally, like I said, work in the hospital as an anesthesia provider, but I haven't practiced since over a year now, because the business has been just growing, and we have other businesses as well. So yeah, it's been a fun
Yeah.
ride for sure.
Amazing. So obviously, being very busy building this business and scaling it very, very quickly, you must have had some kind of optimization in place. How did you manage that kind of a workload?
Yes, for sure. Definitely, we have a team. So what we saw in most syndicators, they were doing the work, and we work so hard to not work so hard. And what happens is that most people just continue to do the daily operations themselves, and that's not what we wanted to, because otherwise we could just stay small and do the work that we were doing. So because of that, we saw the need, and we created an agency where we hire virtual assistants, and that we have our own team, and now we're able to help other people. But it's definitely for us, both of us being in the business, it's most people, again, they're one person team, and we want to make sure that we
Yes.
bring to our partners and to our investors the full attention that they deserve when they invest with us. We have systems in place for everything we do, like even if adding a contact to the CRM, we have an SOP that we follow, or our team follows. So we're pretty much, I think that that comes from the military. If a person goes down, we want to make sure that the documentation of the business is existing, and that's only fair for for our partners. And so yes, we definitely have a group of people that helps us with that.
Perfect. So what kind of tasks, what kind of activities can you delegate to a virtual assistant to scale your business?
Well, I have a lengthy, actually we have a little video that we share, but if your audience wants, I have a list of 25, and that's just 25. There's so many tasks that you can delegate, and I can send that to anyone that wants it here. But pretty much CRM managing, contacts, newsletters. We write the content, but they structure the setup and the sending out. They track performance of our emails. They can put pitch decks together. They can manage investors. We have investor relations, because sometimes we are, the ones that leading the project. They do meetup organizations, follow up with our investors, wishing happy birthday, gifting. Pretty much, like I said, there's definitely a lengthy list that I can share. But anything that doesn't require you, even calling back, vendors, doing comps for the business, the buildings that we are buying. They can do all of that, and then we have a person that can walk and do in-person comps as well. But yeah, there's definitely a lot. Anything that you can think of, if you can train them one time, and they're pretty amazing.
Amazing. Yes. I have a virtual assistant as well in my business that I try to give as much work to her as possible, because I need to have my time freedom as well. So I definitely agree. And I love having someone to kind of give all those tasks to. And we'll make sure to include that link to that video you mentioned in the show notes below as well. So we'll include that. Now, as far as structuring your team, At what point would you say is a good time to hire a virtual assistant? Is there a certain point, like maybe, after you've done a deal or before? Is there, do you have any
Oh,
recommendations on that?
absolutely. Definitely before you need them, because by the time you think I need help, that definitely means that you are already
Mm-hmm.
behind, So, no, and
Yeah.
most syndicators think I'm gonna pay them with the cash flow, and the reality is you want to get them in your team faster. We have seven VAs. So you want to
Mm-hmm.
get them up front, because by the time you actually have a deal, you should have the
Mm-hmm.
relationships with your audience. You should be already putting out content, and I will say
Mm-hmm.
at least a year before a potential investor actually becomes an investor. So if you think about that, and
Okay.
if you're, I will say, if a new person is debating whether it's worth it or not, we actually have a 10-day trial period where they can see the
Mm-hmm.
difference on freeing up their time and
Mm-hmm.
actually being more proactive on sending out content to their audience. Because as you know,
Mm-hmm.
when you're raising capital, you don't want that to be the first time that they know that your audience knows that you are
Exactly.
in the real estate, right?
Mm-hmm.
So building an audience
Of
takes
course.
at least a year. So and it's a
Mm-hmm.
year of giving, educating, giving, educating before you actually. I mean, you can ask them. Maybe your immediate family and friends,
Mm-hmm.
they know what you're up to, but most people out there,
Mm-hmm.
they are not. So assume that nobody sees what you're putting out there. So as far as the
Yeah.
timing, I will say definitely before, as soon as you can, as soon as you're thinking I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
join a team, you know that you should have your own team.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, it's also helping that, like, we hire international, so we're helping another community, and again, most of that, it's a win-win situation. Those people are just super excited to be a part of a team. They get to learn new
Mm-hmm.
information as well, so it definitely is a win-win. But yeah, that's what I would say about the timing.
Yeah. I love that. And I would say, a lot of us, as entrepreneurs, things like content creation, I know for me is one thing that it seems very time consuming. And if you can delegate that to somebody to take care of all of the little minutia, it just frees up so much brain space. So you can focus on what's important, finding new deals and, speaking with more investors. I think those are some of the critical tasks that we can focus on and free up our time. So I think everyone's in this business so that they can have time freedom. We're not here to, have another job. We want to be able to kind of let go and delegate. And I think what you've created makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So the other thing that I see most people struggle at thinking that they are the ones that can do it better and nobody else can. And I hear this from Jesse Itzler. He's an entrepreneur, and if you don't know about him, or look him up. I mean, he is brilliant when it comes to doing business. And he said, delegate and expect 75% done right when you have, and not that you're lowering your expectations, but in reality, if the person is not doing the work and you're not satisfied, likely is most likely that we failed to give the right directions. So being patient and
Mm-hmm.
building and delegating, but eventually they come back and they give you 150, and you're like, oh my gosh, thank you. Like, they're now thinking how you think, and they're thinking ahead of you because they're focused on one task. They're not focusing on they're like you're saying, you clear your mind so that you can see the high paid tasks that you should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
So it hurts me when I see people still managing their CRMs, and like those are things that somebody,
Mm-hmm.
and they love this. They loved helping you. So I would say, if you
Mm-hmm.
haven't yet, and I'm not trying to sell any products, I'm just saying try it because it's so
You're
liberating.
right.
It really is.
Mm-hmm. Now, so you have virtual assistants and you offer services for other people to hire virtual assistants, correct?
Yes. So what we learned on the hiring process was that there is a lot of hesitance from both sides. Most people, when they're hiring, the business is hiring, they're concerned of their privacy, of their content. Is it going to be stolen? Are they going to be abusing my the access that I give them? And are they really going to produce quality work? Right. Those are most of the concerns that the owners, business owners, or entrepreneurs are. And is it affordable? Is it too expensive? Do I have the money for it? And the other side, what we see is some of the VAs, they have been taken advantage because some people gives them work, complete the project, and then they disappear. It's so easy, and so they're hesitant to put all the work up front. So what we created is a process where we hire them under our company, which is a U.S. based company, and we provide that. I would say that settle in their minds of the clients that we are going to be the responsible party for them, right? And then for the VAs, we have a network of virtual assistants that either they know each other, they're either friends, or they have seen that we have been paying. We are a company that is well structured, so it's not like we're gonna bail out. So they come in and they join the team, and they already are like committed. So the reputation that we have created has helped us recruit people that are trainable, they're coachable, and they want to give the 100%. We also used Grant Cardone's training for marketing and sales because we are he's one of our mentors, and we are licensees, so we can actually train them with a 10x mentality. And again, it's just that given the 100%. And these are people, families that are just they want to help, and they want a job. And it has been such a joy to give back in that way, and also help our friends, because when we first started doing this, people ask me like, how do you do all this social media? You're everywhere, you're doing this, you're killing it, but I wasn't doing it by myself. So at the beginning, it actually feels a little weird when you talk about it. Well, I have a help, it's almost like a what do you call a badge that we wear as entrepreneurs, like I'm doing it all, like doesn't have to be that way, right? So I kind of gave ourselves permission to say, yeah, we do have a team, and when we join other teams, some of our partners actually voice concern, like, well, you just finished the closing on the other deal, are you okay with taking another workload? Definitely. We have 8 people working for us or with us. So that was for us a way to share. And we had a lot of partners that were like, hey, I want to can you help me hire one? And then out of seeing that need, we developed the system, and we realized we're helping our partners as well. We all look good. We all like go on vacations 3 or 4 times a year together. Yeah. So it's kind of fun. But so yeah, that's the system that we have created, and ended up now we're helping other businesses like that require more like answering calls, cold calling, because we have been able to expand that to branch to forming those teams. We have other companies that are calling us because they want more, instead of a static workload, they want more active, which is amazing,
Amazing. So is your company for the virtual assistants, is it specific for multifamily syndications, or is it any type of business that needs virtual assistants?
Great question. So we focus heavily on the syndication model because we train them. They know they understand that language. However, we've been able to help other businesses like restaurants, and just it's admin work that they get done. So we hire for other purposes. Right now, we're hiring for a legal company. They're going to be answering phones and stuff like that. So we hire them and we train them for the specific need for the business.
Okay. And what country are the virtual assistants? Are they all different countries, or is it one specific
So we
country?
have majority of them are in Philippines. We do have
Mm-hmm.
some from Mexico, and we had hire from
Mm-hmm.
Venezuela. So I would say most of the interactive, like calling and handling customers over the phone, they seem to
Mm-hmm.
have a better success from the Central America country. But we
Okay.
hire, and that's where we have our contacts, and we have been outsourcing those countries. So right now it's just us two.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah, I really like being able to help out those other countries, especially for me. I'm from the Philippines.
Nice,
Well, I'm from Canada originally, but my heritage is Filipino.
nice.
So I always look to try and hire VAs that are from the Philippines. I want to go back and help my home country, you know?
Absolutely. Same thing for
So,
Mexico. I feel like we were
yeah.
recently in Mexico, and I'm like, it's just bringing back in some way, helping your own country. So
Hmm.
absolutely.
Perfect. So now you mentioned that first you heard about syndications, and it took you a while before you actually got into your first syndication. How did you make that transition? Did you find a specific mentorship that you just fall upon, or how were you able to do that?
When we first started talking about that, we actually were doing some meetups, just joining meetups, and through one of those, my husband ran into somebody that was doing syndications, and he's like, "Hey, I remember
Mm,
you told me about it. We didn't know." And he was active duty. I was still in the military and reservist. So
mm-hmm,
we really didn't wanted to take other investors' money. At that point, we have some interest from other investors. They saw what we were doing, and they wanted to invest with us,
mm-hmm.
but we didn't really know how to take that money from anyone really.
Right.
So
Yeah.
when he run into this couple that they were doing some syndications, he set up a meeting, and they sat with us, and I would say like 3 hours probably, and then just explain the whole concept. And I remember taking all these notes, and like, I don't even know. So another meetup that we signed up for was a virtual event, and the
Mm-hmm.
reason why I signed up for it, because I saw Robert Kawasaki, and I'm like, that's awesome. I want, he's the keynote speaker. I wanted to, be this again. This was the first event that we actually paid for. Everything else we've done was free, and we really, I think
Yeah.
at that point we were in a mastermind, the first mastermind, and it just kind of
Mm-hmm.
opened our eyes to, wow, this is something different. But then through that, we saw that couple that we met in person. There were some of the staff there, or helping, and it
Yeah.
is actually, the event is put together by uh, um, gosh, Sunbrook, uh, um, so,
Okay.
yeah,
Yep.
Sunbrook, and Brad Sunbrook, and we signed up for it
Mm-hmm.
immediately. And in fact, he's having he does annual events, and we have been
Mm-hmm.
signed up with him. We joined the mastermind with him. We and actually became partners this year. We bought a building together with another coaches. So yeah,
Nice.
definitely in that community, he's the one that helped us, and he gets all the credit because he is the one that helped us how
Great.
to and coach us on how to underwrite. And he has a team of coaches, and then we
Mm-hmm.
found through him. We also found Grant Cardone, which if you know anything about
Mm-hmm.
him, he's like the billionaire that buys all these nice buildings. And so we also fall into that
Right.
community, joined the mastermind as well. But
Mm-hmm.
that definitely just helped us see bigger and see other
Mm-hmm.
opportunities on how we can collaborate and help others. But yeah, that's how we ended up.
Perfect. Now I want to jump back a little bit to what we started. I think we maybe have touched on this a little bit in the beginning, but you mentioned that you've been able to joint venture on some self-storage facilities and mobile home parks, and I want to spend the last couple of minutes just kind of going over your experience with that because we haven't talked a lot about that on the show. So can you tell us more about how you were able to acquire these and kind of maybe the pros and cons of those asset classes compared to multifamily?
Yes, of course. So mobile home parks, the way we go about it is we buy the park, and if they're houses that come with it, we sell them to the residents. We put them on payment plan because we don't want to own the houses. We just want to own the land. Compared to the multifamily, there's less capital expenditures, so less capex, because you're only providing the infrastructure and the land pretty much. And usually the cash flow is much higher. Right now we're offering 5-6% on cash on the syndication model, and those other assets are paying 14 to 16% sometimes, and cash on cash. The self storages, the same thing. If we buy them and they're staffed and we put them on automatized, so that there's a calling center that takes all the calls. Everything is run by a website, so there's no need for staffing anybody and the storage. So that decreases also the expenses. Now, when we do cost segregations for these two other assets, there's not a lot of depreciation because the land doesn't depreciate and there's really not much of the infrastructure. So compared to the multifamily, there's less tax breaks or tax strategies. So more cash flow, less tax depreciation. And that's what we like the multifamily, because with that, we are able to take those big write-offs for the cost segregation, accelerated depreciation. And normally we buy them as a joint venture because they're smaller. They're in price. So the lending is a little different. So if a person is going to go for that type of asset, some of the lenders might, even if we were already buying multifamily when we started buying the self storages, and they still prefer somebody that has the experience with that type of asset. So find somebody that has something, some loans like that on their belt, and those are usually smaller loans, but and they are recourse loans. So that's some of the comparison.
Okay, so a little bit have higher cash flow, lower expenses, but if you're trying to get those tax advantages, multifamily seems to be where to go. And you're not doing any syndications with those as well. So you pretty much need to have probably that cash in hand, right, in order to acquire those kind of deals.
Yes, that, or some people, especially in the syndication model, that they're exiting or they came full cycle and now they're sitting on cash and they want to learn or come to these other assets. So there's definitely a lot of cash that, if you don't have the cash, you can do boots in the ground. When we form more teams, those are the type of roles that we're looking for. So, don't be alarmed. And there are some syndications of that assets, those type of assets. So there's that possibility. We just choose to do it with a couple of partners, but we actually, one of them we syndicated. So yeah, there's those opportunities as well.
Okay, great. Now, how would, say someone doesn't have any cash up front to passively invest in, one of these deals? What would you say is kind of the best way for someone who doesn't have, cash to get into this business? And maybe what would be maybe the best avenue? Do you recommend starting multifamily, self-storage, mobile home parks? How can they get started today?
Definitely. If you have the time, that's a very valuable asset. If you're located in a market that is desirable for other people to invest, that's definitely something that you can contribute to a team. Definitely. There's a lot of educational resources that are free, so you don't even have to pay for a mentorship. We invested, I'll say, over $500,000 in education for ourselves. You don't have to do all that at the beginning. Put yourself in rooms that are having these conversations. There's a lot of free content, or YouTube channel has a lot of information that we share openly. But I'll say, make sure that you're speaking the language. You putting yourself out there, because we are so busy that if somebody comes and say, hey, I this is what I know, this is what I want to do, I have the time, please, reach out to us, because that is very valuable. So definitely, I would say, put yourself out there and learn, because if you come and you're still trying to learn what is a syndication, what are the roles, I'm going to send you to at least our YouTube channel or some other resources, right? So definitely there's a lot of that that you can do up front.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I think our audience really learned a lot. I learned from you as well. So thank you again for being on the show. And thanks everybody else for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's show, please write us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, as every review will help us to reach more and more people that are looking to get involved in commercial real estate.
Thank you, Sierra.
Today's show was sponsored by Synergy Capital Investments. To download your free multifamily investment guide for beginners, or to schedule a call to learn about our upcoming investment projects, go to thrivewithsynergy.com. That's thrivewithsynergy.com, or click on the link below.